But these were some of the things that I learned about if you're doing the hobo thing. And a couple other items you might want is a good map of the areas, which might mean it's a several state map. If you're going 1,000 miles, you're probably going across 2 or 3 states, or most of Texas. That happens to be one of the rides that I was fortunate enough to have, was one that went from right outside of El Paso, Texas, all the way out through Pine Bluff, Arkansas, or Texarkana, then up through Pine Bluff, Arkansas, through the Memphis, Tennessee train yard. So that was like about 1,000 miles, and I was lucky on that ride. At one point, the train came to a stop, and I was afraid I might have been seen, so I hid down in the little bathroom. Well, a couple of 3, 4, 5 minutes later, I hear one of the guys walking up on the train, and it's one of the firemen or the engineer, conductors, junior engineer, came back and was specifically looking for me. And so I think he ended up knocking on the little bathroom door. Asked me to come out, and I came out, and said, "What are you doing?" I just, told him who I was, and told him I was just riding, just trying to get down the road, and that, I was legal. I wasn't a Mexican. I wasn't trying to get into the U.S. and, illegal alien or anything like that, which, that wasn't as big a deal back then either as it is now, it seems like. But once he was satisfied that, I was basically harmless, was just riding the train to try to get down the road, and this was one of the ones that I was in the dummy engine, the cab. Apparently when it was going around a corner, it was about 5 engines, but when it would curve like that, the guys up in the front of the engine could see back to the part that I was in the engine that I was in, and could see somebody sitting up in the window there. So that's why they pulled over or had stopped the train, and the guy come back to look for me. And he told me, he said, "It's fine if you sit up in here." He said, "If you see people you don't want to be seen by, so try to duck down." He turned on the radio for the train communications. It's like a little shortwave radio they use in the yards. When they get in the yards, tell them, "Come on back 12 feet, come on 5 feet, come on 3 feet, 2 feet, 1 feet, whoop." And you can hear them communicate and tell them how to back up and how to, wait for them, and when it's ready to go, hooking up new cars or dropping off some of the ones he's got. And then he also brought me back a little lunch bag. I guess it had a couple of sandwiches in it. It seemed like maybe peanut butter and jelly, maybe some cookies, and a couple of cans of soda, which at the time, I don't think I had any water, but they may have had a little fountain in the bathroom. I'm thinking the little sink in there would also squirt water up if you put your finger under the hole, that it would go the other way, and so you could get a little drink out of the water in the bathroom. But having those sodas was nice. That was a nice thing for him to do. I didn't have to do any of that. And basically he was washing his hands too, though. He was saying, "I don't know that you're back here." So I promised him. I said I wouldn't say anything to anybody. And that guy's long retired by now, probably. At least let's hope he is. Hope he did all right. But the big concern along a lot of the border states there, border of Mexico, are illegal aliens. And so if they see them, then they will make an extra effort to try to get that person off the train if they can help it. And in fact, what had happened at one area where the train evidently was passing close to like a little border crossing or something there, maybe it was just a Border Patrol office or something. Somebody saw me, and so they called the train and told them to stop and pull over and let them search the train. And I thought, oh no, why are we stopping again? So I jumped down to the little bathroom again. This is still while I was riding in the cab, the comfort of the little dummy engine. Sure enough, after a few minutes when we'd pulled over, after a few minutes I heard some footsteps on the steps coming up to the engine I was in. And here he was, Border Patrol guy, banging on the bathroom door. Hey, you, I know you're in there. Come on out of there. So I opened the door and came on out. And I said, hey, I'm just trying to get down the road. I'm nobody, not trying to do any harm. And I don't know if I had ID. I must have had some kind of ID. Otherwise, I don't think he would have let me go. But his main concern, and he was literally a Border Patrol guy, he wanted to be sure I was not an illegal. I was not a Mexican. And I assured him, I said, no, I'm a U.S. citizen. I guess talked plain enough English that, you know, he probably assumed I didn't really look exactly the part either to be a Mexican or illegal alien. And you know, that's stereotype too, so I'm not trying to be prejudiced or stereotyping about it, but I guess between my not having any kind of accent and speaking English clearly and not looking particularly Mexican, he decided that I probably was a U.S. citizen. Left me alone, left me on the train. Walked away, didn't look back. Train started up a few minutes later and we were back on our way again. So I was talking about the things that you needed. So it's good to have that map that'll cover the whole distance of where you're riding. My other train ride was from Washington, D.C. south all the way through the rest of Virginia, North Carolina, into South Carolina, and I think maybe got off in Sparta, South Carolina, which is a little bit west and north of Columbia, South Carolina, the state capital there. A little bit south of Charlotte, North Carolina. But that was probably 600 mile trip. I don't know, maybe more than that. But so having a map that went all the way down through, from Virginia all the way down through to South Carolina was useful on that trip. And on the one through Texas and parts of Arkansas, useful to have a map for that area. In both cases, the full U.S. contiguous U.S. map would have been useful too, but also having a little more detailed state map would have been useful, state by state. And a lot of the state maps, not only do they have the highways marked on them, but they also have the tracks marked on them. And so one other thing that's useful to have is a little portable AM/FM radio. It's nice to have music when you're doing something like that anyway, so that's one reason to have it. And then another reason is as you're going from one radio station zone to another radio station zone, you can hear them saying this is WKRP out of Cincinnati or whatever station along the way that you're listening to, and you can find it on the map and say, well, it must be near this town. I just called out to the radio station for that town. And you can kind of get an idea of that by looking out, if you have a window or view, at highway signs that are on highways. If the highway is parallel to the railroad track, sometimes you can see Washington, D.C. or whatever on the highway sign to tell you that you're near D.C. Or you might see a storefront that's over on the road that's a little bit off of the tracks. But you can see the front of the store and it says Sparta, South Carolina Hardware, or whatever the town may be on a little sign like that. The thing I'm getting at is when you're on that train, there ain't no signs. There's nothing on the train tracks to tell you where you are unless you're the engineer and you know that that signal means that you're getting close to Charlotte, North Carolina, or wherever you're going through. Or unless you're just that familiar with the lines and know the lines and know the countryside, if you can estimate the miles it's gone, you might figure, well, We left D.C. about 8 o'clock this morning. Oh, having a watch, that doesn't hurt either. Left D.C. about 8 o'clock this morning. You can tell time by the position of the sun partly, but maybe it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon now, so we've been riding for, a good 8, 10 hours, whatever. And figure you've been maybe making about 40 miles an hour down the tracks, triangulate and coordinate and figure out about where you're at. But having that little AM FM radio, and especially if it's got the AM channel, I think was more informative than the FM channels. A lot of the FM channels are now all kind of conglomerated on big corporate Q94, call symbols and stuff, and you don't even know what city it's out of, or very rarely they mention that. But a lot of the AM stations are real community oriented. You're in this community because it's that community's AM station, and so that's a good way to help you figure out where you're at if you've gone far enough. And then when you're around the bigger cities, you can kind of tell you're getting into a big city. You can't always tell what big city, but like I say again, if you kind of keep your eye out looking along the road, you can see signs along the roadsides or buildings along the roadside there, not far from the tracks. A lot of times you'll see some signs that'll give you an idea of where you're at. And then when it stops in that next yard whether or not you want to get off there or not, because sometimes you might want to stay on it and keep on going. Go on to Florida. In my case, South Carolina was far enough for me. I believe we had taken fluids. Me and another guy rode that train together most of that way, from D.C. down to Sparta, South Carolina. But by that time, I believe we had ran out, and I believe we were thirsty and hungry probably, and saw the town that we were coming up on was big enough that would probably have maybe a mission, a Salvation Army or something there. We'd get a grub and maybe spend the night off the road and indoors on a bunk and get a shower and shave, and next day be able to start off fresh again. Various adventures on the road. This was talking about some of my train hoboing. Do not do this at home. But if you ever did, maybe there's a few pointers you can look out for. Watch out for that bull, because if he gets you, sometimes they've been known to beat up the hobo to try to put in his mind not to be coming back around all that dangerous equipment. I ain't going to break your arm, I'm just going to bruise it up real bad, but I just want you to know what it's going to feel like when that train runs over your arm. You hear me, boy? I didn't have him tell me that, but I did have one run me out of the train yard and take me up to the highway. He was gracious and set me out on the highway and said, "Now I don't want to see you back in my yard. If you come back in my yard, I'm going to have you arrested for trespassing. You're going to be put in jail, locked up." So I didn't go back to that yard. I just took that as meaning good time to get off the train. That was the ride went through Texas and Arkansas and Tennessee, and I guess it was part of Alabama where I got thrown off was in Alabama, I think, near Decatur. Seemed like. That'll be another story.